4 minutes and 37 seconds. That is how long it took my father to threaten to cut me out of his will. I remember checking my phone timer when the call ended, laughing until tears streamed down my face. There I was, sitting in my sun-drenched California apartment, making more money than he had ever seen, 3,000 miles from the family that had spent 27 years looking through me, rather than at me. Drop a yes in the comments if you have ever had to laugh just to keep from screaming at your own family. I want to know, I am not the only one. Westport, Washington, is not where people go to be seen. It is where you go to watch the ocean tear itself apart against the rocks, while you stay warm and dry behind triple-paned glass. My house sits on a cliff edge, a modern structure of steel and cedar that I designed and built 2 years ago. To the local tax assessor, it is a piece of real estate, valued at $1.2 million. To me, it is a fortress. I stood at the kitchen island, reviewing the schematics for the commercial waterfront district with Chloe, my business partner. The only sound was the rain hitting the skylights and the hum of the espresso machine. This was the life I had engineered. Precise, quiet, and lucrative. There were no shouting matches here, no passive-aggressive comments about my weight or my career choices, just the clean, honest work of building things that last. Then my phone buzzed against the marble countertop. It was a text from Aunt Destiny. She was the only one on my mother's side who had kept my number after I went no contact. She didn't send a greeting, just a screenshot from a family group chat I had been removed from months ago. The message was from my mother, Patricia. It was addressed to Mrs. Montgomery, the matriarch of the wealthy family my brother Tyler was trying to marry into. I am so sorry Kelsey won't be at the engagement party, my mother wrote. She is currently in a specialized residential facility. She has been battling some personal demons and mental instability for a while now. We thought it best she focus on her recovery, away from the stress of high society events. I stared at the screen. The room didn't spin. I didn't drop my coffee mug. I just felt the air in the room drop 10 degrees. A residential facility. Rehab. They hadn't just explained my absence. They had pathologized it. They had turned my silence into a sickness to save their own face. Chloe looked up from the blueprints, sensing the shift in my energy. Bad news? Market manipulation. I said, my voice flat. My parents are short-selling my reputation. I looked out at the gray horizon, and for a moment, I wasn't a 29-year-old CEO. I was 12 again, sitting at the dinner table while my father asked Tyler about his day and looked right through me. Psychologists have a term for siblings like me. The glass child. We are transparent. Our needs are invisible, because the parents are too consumed by the shine of the golden child, or the crisis of the problem child. You learn to be see-through. You learn that having needs is a liability. That is the trap of normalizing cruelty. You don't realize you are being abused because nobody is hitting you. They are just ignoring you. It is a quiet, suffocating violence. You start to believe that your invisibility is your fault, a flaw in your design. You think if you just perform better, if you get better grades, earn more money, become more perfect, you will finally reflect enough light for them to see you. I spent 20 years trying to increase my valuation in their eyes. I thought if I became successful enough, I would graduate from being a liability to an asset. But looking at that text message, I realized the truth. They didn't want me to be successful. They needed me to be broken. A broken daughter explains why she isn't around. A broken daughter garners sympathy from wealthy in-laws. A successful, sovereign daughter who chose to walk away? That raises questions they cannot answer without indicting themselves. They had built a narrative where I was the tragedy, and they were the long-suffering saints. Kelsey? Chloe asked again. I turned off my phone screen. We need to expedite the due diligence on the Montgomery portfolio, I said. I have a feeling I'm going to be meeting them sooner than we planned. I wasn't in rehab, I was in escrow. And my parents were about to find out that glass, when it breaks, becomes very, very sharp. My father called again 20 minutes later. I did not let it go to voicemail this time. I placed the phone on the granite island, put it on speaker, and continued highlighting the zoning restrictions on the blueprints in front of me. Kelsey, he said. His voice wasn't angry. It was tight. the specific frequency of a man trying to control a situation that was spiraling out of his grasp. "We need to talk about next weekend." "I am listening," I said, capping my highlighter. "Tyler is getting married in Spokane. It is a big affair. The Montgomery family is, well, they are very particular people, traditional. They value family unity above everything else." "Is that why you told them I was in rehab?" I asked. My voice was level, devoid of accusation. "I just wanted the data point confirmed." There was a pause on the line. A hesitation that betrayed him more than any confession. "Your mother and I had to say something, Kelsey. You vanished. You stopped answering calls. We couldn't very well tell a family like the Montgomerys that our daughter just walked out on us. It reflects poorly on everyone. We were protecting your reputation as much as ours. Protecting my reputation by painting me as unstable. It was a masterclass in gaslighting. So here is the plan," he continued, gathering steam. "You are going to come to the wedding. We will tell them you have been discharged early for good behavior. You will smile, you will be polite, and you will not talk business or money or anything complicated. You will just be Tyler's supportive sister, who is getting back on her feet. And if I don't? Then you are done," he snapped. "I mean it this time. You are struggling, Kelsey. I know you are. You can't survive out there alone forever. If you embarrass us in front of these people, don't expect a dime from my estate when I pass. You will need us eventually." He was betting on my failure. He was so certain of my incompetence that he had bet his entire social standing on it. "I understand your position," I said. I tapped the red icon to end the call. I didn't slam the phone down. I didn't scream into a pillow. Emotion is just bad data in an audit. I deleted it. Instead, I pulled my laptop closer. "Montgomery," I said aloud. I typed the name into my professional database, not Google. I went straight to the county property records and the commercial asset registry. If Tyler was marrying into a family that my father was this terrified of offending, they weren't just rich. They were influential. The search results populated in seconds. Montgomery Holdings. I scrolled through the list of assets, residential towers, commercial strips, and then, right at the bottom, the crown jewel, the Spokane Commercial Waterfront District. My breath hitched. For the last 3 months, my firm had been preparing a blind bid for a massive redevelopment project in downtown Spokane. The seller had been listed as an anonymous trust. We had been analyzing the soil samples, the traffic patterns, the zoning laws. We knew everything about that land, except who owned it. Now I knew. Tyler was marrying the daughter of the man who owned the commercial waterfront district. My parents were desperate to secure this marriage because it was their ticket to proximity with real power. They thought they were the only ones playing the game, but they didn't know who was sitting on the other side of the negotiating table. I looked at the estimated valuation of the land. $52 million. My firm was the lead investor. I wasn't just a bidder. I was the person putting the deal together. I sat back in my chair, the realization washing over me like a cold wave. My father thought I was a liability he needed to hide. He thought I was the stain on the family portrait. But in the room that actually mattered, the boardroom, the closing table, the bank, I was the only person with any real leverage. I wasn't the victim, I was the asset. I picked up my phone and dialed my executive assistant. "Book a flight to Spokane," I said. "And get me a suite at the Davenport Grand. I have a meeting to take before the wedding." I wasn't going home to play the role of the recovering addict. I was going home to close a deal. The drive to Spokane usually felt like a regression. Mile by mile, the years would peel away until I was a teenager again, bracing for impact. But this time, the asphalt was just a means of conveyance. I wasn't driving a getaway car. I was driving a tank disguised as a luxury sedan. I didn't drive to my parents' house in the suburbs. I drove straight to the center of the city, pulling up to the valet stand at the Davenport Grand. It is the kind of hotel where the floors are marble, and the air smells like white tea and old money. My parents couldn't afford a room block here. They were hosting the out-of-town guests at a budget motel near the highway. I checked into a corner suite on the 15th floor. I hung my suit in the closet, a charcoal Italian wool number that cost more than my father's car. I wasn't dressing for a wedding. I was dressing for a merger. At 2 o'clock, I took the elevator down to the private conference room I had reserved. Mr. Montgomery walked in 5 minutes early. He was a man built of granite and good tailoring, the kind of person who occupies a room without trying. He was expecting the CEO of K.E. Development. He wasn't expecting a 29-year-old woman. I saw the flicker of hesitation in his eyes, the age bias. I didn't smile to soften it. I extended my hand. "Mr. Montgomery," I said. "I am Kelsey. Thank you for making time before your family's big weekend." He shook my hand. His grip was firm, testing. "I admit, you are younger than I expected for a portfolio of this size. The market doesn't ask for ID," I replied, gesturing to the seat. "It just asks for results." We sat. For the next hour, I didn't mention Tyler. I didn't mention my parents. I laid out the vision for his waterfront district. I spoke his language: yield rates, anchor tenants, long-term legacy preservation. I showed him how my firm would protect the history of the buildings while making them profitable for the next century. I watched his skepticism evaporate, replaced by the specific kind of respect that one shark gives another. He wasn't looking at a troubled girl. He was looking at a peer. "Impressive," he said, closing the folder. "Truly. Most developers just want to bulldoze and flip. You actually did the reading." "I always do the reading," I said. He leaned back, checking his watch. "I wish my future son-in-law had half your focus. Nice kid, but let's just say he thinks the world owes him a living." The irony tasted like copper in my mouth. He was talking about Tyler. He was complaining about my brother to me, having absolutely no idea that we shared the same DNA. "Weddings are stressful," I said neutrally. "You have no idea, the family he comes from." He waved a hand, dismissive. "Nice people, I suppose, but messy. The mother is frantic, the father is posturing, and apparently, there is a sister who is institutionalized somewhere. Tragedy." My heart hammered against my ribs. A single, violent thud. Institutionalized. That was the narrative. Not just rehab. Institutionalized. They had painted me as invalid to explain my absence, while I sat 3 feet away from him, negotiating the sale of his legacy. I could have ended it right there. I could have told him who I was. I could have watched the color drain from his face. But that would have been emotional. That would have been messy. And I was here to do business. "Tragedy indeed," I said, my voice steady. "But I find that people are rarely what they seem on paper, Mr. Montgomery." I stood up. The meeting was over. We had a verbal agreement on the term sheet. "I will see you at the signing next week?" he asked. "Actually," I said, a small, cold smile touching my lips, "I suspect I will see you sooner than that." I walked back to the elevator, the contract in my briefcase. The trap was set. My parents had sold him a story about a broken girl. Tonight, at the rehearsal dinner, I was going to introduce him to the reality. The rehearsal dinner was being held in the grand ballroom of the Davenport, a cavernous space draped in white chiffon and choked with expensive flowers. I stood outside the double doors, adjusting the lapels of my silk blazer. This was my power armor. No thrift store finds or sensible shoes tonight. I was wearing McQueen. Heels that clicked with authority. And a watch that signaled I understood the value of time. I pushed the doors open. The hum of conversation didn't stop, but heads turned. That is the thing about walking into a room like you own it, people assume you do. I scanned the crowd. It took me 3 seconds to find my parents. They were huddled near the bar, holding their drinks like life rafts. My mother, Patricia, looked brittle in a pastel dress that washed her out. My father, Gary, was laughing too loudly at something a waiter said. Tyler was there, too, preening in a rented tuxedo, looking every inch the golden boy who had never been told no. Then my mother saw me. Her face didn't register joy or relief, it registered pure, unadulterated panic. She grabbed my father's arm, her nails digging into his sleeve. He turned, saw me, and actually took a step back. I didn't approach them. I walked to the bar and ordered a sparkling water with a twist of lime. Patricia intercepted me before I could take a sip. "What are you doing here?" she hissed, her voice low and frantic. She tried to herd me toward the exit, but I didn't budge. "We told you to come, but we didn't think you would." Look like this. Like what? I asked, examining my manicure. Solvent? Like you're trying to upstage the bride, she snapped. And that suit? Who paid for that? Did you put it on a credit card? Kelsey, we can't bail you out if you get into debt trying to impress people. She was still doing it, still rewriting reality to fit her narrative of my incompetence. I didn't ask for a bailout, I said. I am just here for the family unity you insisted on. Gary joined us, his face flushed. Keep your voice down, he growled. The Montgomerys will be here any minute. Remember the plan. You are recovering. You are fragile. Do not talk about work. Do not talk about money. Just smile and nod. Dad. Tyler chimed in, strolling over with a smirk. Let her be. She probably just wants a free meal. It's not like she gets to eat like this often. He looked me up and down, dismissing the $4,000 suit as a costume. Just don't embarrass me, Kels, seriously. This is my big night. They were terrified, not of me, but of the version of me they had invented cracking open. They needed me to be small, so they could feel big. I won't embarrass you, Tyler, I said. I promise. The doors opened again. The room went silent. Mr. Montgomery entered, flanked by his wife and daughter, Tyler's fiancé. He looked commanding, scanning the room with the same shark-like precision he'd used in our meeting. My father straightened his tie, putting on his patriarch mask. Here we go, he whispered. Showtime. Kelsey, stay behind me. He stepped forward to greet the man he hoped would save his financial future. But Mr. Montgomery wasn't looking at him. He was looking at me. Mr. Montgomery walked toward us. My father puffed up his chest, a reflex honed by decades of pretending to be more important than he was. He extended his hand, a smile plastered on his face that was equal parts desperation and salesmanship. Mr. Montgomery, my father boomed. So glad you could. Mr. Montgomery didn't stop. He didn't slow down. He walked past my father's outstretched hand, as if it were a piece of furniture he didn't want to bump into. He walked past Tyler, who was already holding a glass of champagne like a prop. He stopped directly in front of me. Kelsey, he said, his voice carrying the warmth of a successful closing. I didn't realize you were the sister everyone was whispering about. You keep your cards close to your chest. The silence in the immediate vicinity wasn't just quiet, it was a vacuum. It sucked the air out of my mother's lungs. I saw her mouth open, but no sound came out. Mr. Montgomery, I replied, taking his hand. I prefer to let the portfolio do the talking. It is good to see you again. Again? Tyler squeaked. You know him? Mr. Montgomery turned to my brother, his expression cooling significantly. Know her? Tyler. This is the woman who is revitalizing the entire waterfront district. She is the reason your father-in-law is going to retire happy. He turned back to me, a look of genuine admiration on his face. I reviewed the term sheet you sent over an hour ago. The zoning loophole you found for the historic preservation tax credits? Brilliant. Truly. My father finally found his voice. It was high and thin, cracking under the weight of his cognitive dissonance. I think there is a misunderstanding. Kelsey isn't. She isn't involved in business. She's been away. She's unwell. He was still trying to sell the lie. He was so committed to the narrative of my failure that he was trying to gaslight a man worth 9 figures. Mr. Montgomery frowned, looking between me and my father. Unwell? She just pitched me a $52 million acquisition strategy this afternoon. She seems perfectly sharp to me. The room seemed to tilt. The guests were watching now. The lie was unraveling in real time, pulling the thread of my parents' reputation with it. She's confused, my father insisted, stepping between us, trying to physically block Mr. Montgomery's view of me. Kelsey, tell him. Tell him you need to go sit down. I looked at my father. Really looked at him. For my entire life, this man had been a titan. His approval was the sun, and his disapproval was the winter. I had spent decades terrified of his voice, his judgment, his threat to cut me off. But looking at him now, flushed and sweating in a suit that didn't quite fit, I didn't feel fear. I felt physics. I was witnessing the illusion of power in an empty wallet. Psychologically, narcissists like my father operate on a currency of perceived authority. They believe their power is intrinsic, a birthright. But it isn't. Their power is rented. It is leased from the people they control. They use money, or the promise of money, to buy compliance. But the moment you have more capital than they do, the lease expires. I looked at his face and I didn't see a father. I saw a man who was over-leveraged. He was emotionally bankrupt. He was threatening me with an inheritance that didn't exist, trying to control me with money he didn't have. He was a landlord trying to evict a tenant who actually owned the building. The illusion dissolved. He wasn't scary, he was just insolvent. I stepped around him. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. The person with the leverage never needs to yell. I am not confused, Gary, I said. I didn't call him Dad. And I am not unwell. I turned to the Montgomerys, addressing the entire circle. My parents told you I was in rehab to explain why I haven't spoken to them in 6 months. They lied. I haven't spoken to them because I was busy building the company that is about to buy your assets. I looked my father dead in the eye. I'm not in rehab, Dad. I'm in escrow. The dinner didn't recover. There was no polite recovery from that kind of truth. The Montgomerys were visibly disgusted. Not because my family was poor, wealth rarely cares about that if the pedigree is right, but because they were frauds. In high-stakes real estate, trust is the currency, and my parents had just printed counterfeit bills. Mr. Montgomery turned to my father. His voice was ice. Gary, I think it is best if we postpone this wedding until your family sorts out its inventory. Tyler made a noise like a balloon deflating. My mother started to cry, the soft, practiced sobbing she used to get her way. But nobody moved to comfort her. I didn't stay to watch the fallout. I didn't need to. The deal was done. The terms were set. I walked out of the ballroom, my heels clicking a steady rhythm on the marble floor. I didn't look back. I walked through the lobby, past the valet stand, and out into the cool Spokane night. I got into my car and drove. I drove past the house I grew up in, dark and silent now. I drove past the school where I had been invisible. I drove until the city lights faded in my rearview mirror, replaced by the deep, comforting black of the highway, leading back to the coast. When I finally pulled into my driveway in Westport, it was nearly dawn. The ocean was gray and restless, crashing against the rocks below my deck. I unlocked the front door and stepped inside. The air smelled of sea salt and cedar. It was quiet. Not the empty silence of being ignored, but the rich, full silence of peace. I walked out onto the deck and leaned against the railing. The wind whipped my hair around my face, stripping away the last residue of the rehearsal dinner. The perfume. The tension. The lies. I pulled my phone out of my pocket. 17 missed calls from Gary. 12 from Patricia. 4 from Tyler. I didn't listen to the voicemails. I didn't read the texts. I opened my contacts list. I scrolled to Dad. I hit block caller. I did the same for Mom and Tyler. It wasn't an act of anger. It was an act of hygiene. You don't keep toxic waste in your living room just because you've had it a long time. You remove it. I stood there, watching the sun break over the water, and for the first time in 29 years, I didn't feel transparent. I felt solid. I felt real. I was no longer the glass child. I was the architect of my own life. I turned back to the house, my house, and closed the sliding glass door. The lock clicked into place with a sound like finality. They tell you that family is everything. They tell you that blood is thicker than water. But sometimes, blood is just a biological accident. Sometimes, the people who are supposed to protect you are the ones you need protection from. If you are the invisible child, the one they look through, the one they only see when they need something, stop waiting. Stop waiting for them to apologize. Stop waiting for them to notice you. Stop waiting for permission to exist. Build your own kingdom where they cannot find the gate. Build it so high and so strong that their voices can't reach you over the walls. You are not glass. You are a diamond. And diamonds don't break, they cut. If this story reminded you of your own strength, please share it. Let's remind every glass child out there that they are made of diamonds, not glass. Subscribe for more stories of reclaiming your worth.